Good morning. Good morning. Good webinar Wednesday morning. If you've been with us before, you are familiar with how we work. We start right on time because your time is money and we respect that. I am Diane Michael with Beyond the Boardroom, and I'm here with my friend and my CAM partner, Lindsay Lombardi with Coastal Living Association Management and Dominion Management. If this is your first time with us, welcome. If you're returning, we sincerely thank you for supporting our system and our program. Our goal at Beyond the Boardroom is to educate board members and CAMs in an easy way at your desk, on your phone, while you're traveling. We know how important education and CE credits are, and that's exactly why we decided to launch our Beyond the Boardroom program over a year ago. We started on the fourth Wednesday of each month and have already grown to now offer education and CE credits on the second and fourth Wednesdays and also others, because I don't know if we're on a second or fourth Wednesday today. So mark your calendars for our next one happening on February 25th. I'll put this in the chat, but on February 25th, we will be offering one CEU for HR, for insurance, and for OPP. So you know where you are on the courses that you need, the classes that you need. So again, on February 25th, and I'll put it in the chat, one CEU for HR, insurance, and OPP. So we're excited about that. Keep watching the emails and be sure to save us as safe senders when you get those emails from me, from the Beyond the Boardroom emails, so that you don't miss important education updates as we are offering different types of legal updates, board certifications, things of that nature. And as the requirements continue to grow from the state, we will continue to grow our program. So be looking out for all of our new offerings. And of course, we sincerely appreciate it if you let your board members know to attend and fellow CAMs. Board members, we will always be in our newsletters, we'll always say whether the board member gets credit or not. But as you know, as a CAM, and if you're a board member here with us today, a more educated board member is better for everyone. And that's what we are all about, is educating board members and CAMs. Okay, we would love to see where you're coming in from today. Could you put into the chat where you are coming in from? We'd love to see that. Let's see the chat. All right, there we go. We got Naples, we got Hollywood, Sarasota, Port St. Lucie. Keep it going, guys. Let John, our first presenter, see where you're coming in from. We love to see that we have people coming in from the whole entire state of Florida. Thank you guys for being present again. Today, we have two continuing education credits for you, one for OPP and one for ELE, and some other great content. I'll be posting the agenda in the chat as well. Lindsay, do you just want to say hello and go over the certificate or the credit part?
Sure. So we're not going to get too far into the CE credit as far as how you submit for that because we'll explain it at the end of each course, but we will give you all that information at the end of the course. Please understand that we are required to follow the guidelines of the DBPR, so you do have to stay for the entire course in order to get credit, which is why we don't give the information until the end. So please make sure that you stay tuned in.
Okay, so we're going to kick off this morning with one approved CEU for OPP, HOA and COA swimming pool management presented by Wells Aquatics. I have been able to work with John, who is your educator this morning, for a few years now, and I'm happy to introduce him and can stand by the fact that he embodies experience, integrity, and leadership in the pool construction industry. John Oakes is the proud owner of Central Florida Homes and Pools in Winter Park, Florida, where he has been leading the way in both commercial and residential swimming pool construction and renovation since 2010. With decades of experience, John has built and remodeled countless pools across the state, always with a homeowner first approach, and also has a vast experience working in the commercial sector. But his experience doesn't stop there. John is also a partner of the award-winning pool construction company Wells Aquatics, who recently expanded into franchises. So if y'all know anyone who's looking to open a swimming pool franchise, I can tell you it's a great opportunity. John oversees commercial pool field operations, where he serves as a qualifier, a consultant, and a relationship manager, which every CAM needs in their toolbox, as Lindsay says. John's career is backed by more than 30 years in construction and business leadership, from building a thriving retail furniture company in the 90s to leading large scale projects like the $1 million DOT contract on the Highway 528 Beachline expansion. On top of that, he's a certified commercial and residential swimming pool contractor and a certified building contractor and a licensed real estate agent and a certified CE provider for the swimming pool industry. We are so excited to have you with us this morning, John. Welcome.
Thank you, Diane. So we'd like to start this session by identifying the differences. There's sort of a misconception for a lot of people, that there's a huge difference between a commercial swimming pool and a residential swimming pool. Yes, they both are supposed to hold water, but that's about where the commonality ends. If we sorry about that, I'm working the PowerPoint too quickly. Let me back up. So the distinctions between a commercial swimming pool and a residential swimming pool. First of all, a residential swimming pool is intended to serve one household, and a commercial swimming pool, or a swimming pool, becomes commercial when it is intended to serve more than one household. The safety standards and construction requirements and maintenance requirements that apply to a commercial pool are much, much more stringent than that of a residential swimming pool. One of the common problems that we have with HOAs particularly is we'll have property owners that say, well, we at my house we used to have this system or that system on our swimming pool and we really loved it. But a lot of those systems don't really apply to a commercial pool. For example, a salt chlorination system, we put those on almost every residential swimming pool, new construction swimming pool that we build these days, but we put very few of them on commercial swimming pools. And the primary reason is that the Florida Department of Health requires that cannot be the only sanitary system on the pool. It can be a backup system, or it needs to be backed up with Stenner pumps and chlorine. So it can't be the dedicated sanitation system on a commercial pool. There's other examples of these differences, but just because you can do it, the point being, just because you can do it on your residential pool doesn't mean that you can do it on your commercial swimming pool. So moving on, the DOH, Department of Health, has a very complicated and comprehensive inspection after we're finished building a commercial pool that we have to pass before you're allowed to open it. With a residential swimming pool, we just have to go through the local building department and get our series of inspections and then a final inspection, and the pool's ready to be used. On the commercial side of things, we also have to have the municipal building department inspections throughout the construction project. And then at the end, we have a big inspection with the Florida Health Department that we have to pass on dozens and dozens and dozens of different topics or measurements, dimensions, quality control items before they'll let us open. The design differences are substantial as well. On a residential swimming pool, we set up a pump. The pump pulls water from the main drain and from a skimmer and maybe from a vacuum port, runs it through a filtration system, chlorination or sanitation system, and then sends it back to the swimming pool. On a commercial swimming pool, because we use much larger pumps, and the suction power of those pumps is so much greater, we're not allowed to have direct suction out of the swimming basin. What I mean by that is the water that goes into the main drain on a commercial swimming pool cannot go directly to a pump. It has to drain into a collection tank, which is a separate body of water that's connected to the swimming pool with pipes. And then the pump draws water out of that tank. And as the water level in the tank drops, gravity feeds water out of the swimming pool back into the tank. The reason that we go to all of this trouble is to reduce, actually, pretty much eliminate the chance of entrapment in the main drain. We've all heard the terrible stories about kids getting, or even adults getting trapped by a pump, by the suction of a pump underwater in a swimming pool and drowning. The most notable story that you hear over and over is the Virginia Graham Baker story, which that particular accident ended up changing the whole pool industry very significantly. I think the event happened in the early 2000s. The Virginia Graham Baker Act safety changes, I believe, took effect in 2007, but there are very substantial changes um, to the hydraulic system of residential and commercial swimming pools to reduce the incidence of possible entrapment. So, in looking at some of these pictures, this is a photograph of a commercial swimming pool, which is a competition pool. A couple of notable features in this pool are that you'll see we've got a paver deck, we've got a concrete coping, and there is a gutter at the edge of the pool. If I'll have another picture in just a minute that shows that a little bit better. But on commercial swimming pools, if the square footage of the water surface area is equal to or exceeds 1,000 square feet, the pool has to have a gutter around the perimeter. Makes it much more expensive to construct. Pools that are 999 square feet and less, we can use skimmers, which would be similar to what you would find in a backyard swimming pool, with the exception of there'll be multiple skimmers, and the skimmers would drain to a collection tank. Let me see. This picture you'll see is a commercial pool with a zero entry and a sun shelf. You'll notice that there's a grate that runs across behind those two handrails, and the water in the pool spills over into that gutter, and that is the skimmer system on a commercial gutter pool. I believe it was around 2019 or 2020 that they began to allow us to actually put sun shelves in commercial swimming pools. Prior to that, which this is an older picture, the maximum shallow water section of a swimming pool was 4 feet, and you can see that first step on this particular pool is 4 feet wide. This pool is at Ellie Ray's campground over in, I think it's close to High Springs. I'm not sure what the little town is there. But the zero in or the portion of the deck of the swimming pool deck around the perimeter of the pool from the water's edge back 4 feet is considered the wet deck by the Florida Department of Health. And there's some very specific requirements for that wet deck that the health department strictly enforces. One of them is that there has to be a 2 to 4% slope away from the swimming pool water's edge. And this is to prevent rainwater and splash water from running back into the pool and carrying whatever it is that's on the deck. I've got a job that we are going to be addressing this evening at an HOA board presentation where the health department is threatening to close their pool because their deck has settled. It's a concrete deck. It's settled due to the soil underneath the deck not being properly compacted upon construction, and they have drainage pipes that run under the deck that carry rainwater from the roofs of the amenity center under the deck, and those pipes are leaking and causing the deck to settle. But the health department's gotten involved because the concrete is cracked and the deck slopes are wrong. So there's two violations that the health department has cited here. One of them is that where the deck is cracked, the gap or lip that's created in the concrete exceeds the 3/16 of an inch allowable variation. And so they're calling that a trip hazard. the other problem is that the slope no longer works properly because the deck is settled. We think that the solution to that particular problem is going to be to pull a concrete deck up, add soil to get the grade right and the slopes right, and reinstall a paver deck. We'll see if that works that way or not, but that's what we're proposing. This is a picture of an older pool. You can see the gutter that I was describing very clearly in this picture. And you can also see that there's 4 feet of paver deck going over to the fence. And that's the paver deck. That's the wet deck portion of the swimming pool that concerns the health department. And this has to have a 2 to 4% slope away from that curb. Um, the new construction commercial pools that we're building these days typically don't have a curb like this. The deck is level with the top of this curb, and it just steps down onto that gutter. But if you're in the process of having proposals, RFPs, requests for proposals, if you've issued those to pool contractors because you're going to be renovating a pool like this, there's a couple of things to be concerned about that need to be included in that proposal. One of them is if they do anything with the deck, the slope on that deck is going to be measured before the health department allows you to reopen the swimming pool. Secondly, this tile that you see on the back of the curb, that's the blue tile, it looks like it's a 1x1 tile with a 2x6 mud cap tile on top of it. We've had a recent code change that requires any tile that has a horizontal portion on it, which this tile that we're looking at is actually 6 inches, each piece is 6 inches long and 2 inches wide, but it's three quarters of an inch bull-nosed over. Because of a recent code change, any tile that has that bull nose now has to be a non-skid tile. So if this particular pool was going to be renovated and they were going to refinish the pool, the tile would have to be redone and the tile would have to meet today's code. So all that tile would need to be replaced with a non-skid tile. You can't really see it very well in this picture, but on the inside of this curb, there's another tile line, which is also a bullnose tile like this, and that'll have to be non-skid. And even further, once you get inside of the pool, on the inside edge of the gutter, there's another row of tile, and that also has to be a non-skid tile. The requirement for that to be a non-skid tile has been in effect for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years now. But one of the very important points to understand as a board member or as a property manager is that when you decide, so the health department will grandfather in certain deficiencies if there's been code changes since your pool has been built. When you decide to, or when it becomes time to refinish the swimming pool, you drain and refinish the swimming pool. First of all, you have to notify the health department that you're going to do that, take the pool out of service. That's going to trigger an inspection before you can open it of the work that you've done. And at that inspection, because you've refinished the swimming pool, everything about that swimming pool has to be compliant with today's code, which that can be expensive and there can be some significant additional changes that would be required. And I'll go over some of those items that we run into as we go through this program. So this is just an example of a residential skimmer pool. I put this in here so that you could visualize the difference between a gutter and a skimmer pool. If you look up here on the top right-hand corner, you can see that there's a skimmer lid and a skimmer throat there. Once again, when we build a pool like this, we do pay attention to the slope of the deck. We try to put that 2 to 4% slope away from the swimming pool on all the swimming pools that we build, but nobody measures that on a residential pool. We don't have an intermittent health inspection, and the final inspector doesn't look at that. Typically, in most of the municipalities where we build, I haven't had that issue yet. So the circulation and collection systems are different. I touched on this a little bit earlier. On a residential pool, you'll have a pump. It draws water out of the swimming pool, main basin typically, through a main drain, a vac line, and through a skimmer or multiple skimmers. On a commercial swimming pool, that's not allowed. We have the collection tank, which is typically mounted, buried in the ground over by the equipment area. And that tank, setting the elevation of that tank whenever you're replacing a pack, an equipment pack, or when you're building a pool is absolutely critical. The elevation of that tank has to be the same as the elevation of the swimming pool, even though they're not right next to each other. And the reason for this is one of the plumbing lines that's required to run from the swimming pool to the collection tank is called a level line or static line. It's just an open pipe. And what that does is when the pumps are turned off, it equalizes the water level in those two bodies of water. So if your tank is set too low, when the pumps turn off, the pool will flood the tank and you'll think you have a leak because the tank will overflow and the water will dissipate and you'll come out and find out that your pool doesn't have as much water in it as it did yesterday. If it's set too high, the pump will when the pumps come on to draw water out of the tank to cause gravity to feed water from the pool into the tank, the pump may be able to draw the water down too low, and then the filter grids that are in that tank will break the surface of the water, and the pump will lose suction and cavitate. So this would only apply to new construction, which probably isn't pertinent to this, but if many of the commercial swimming pools that we work on and that we get involved with have an equipment pack, which usually has a tank built into it. And if you're replacing that, those usually get replaced about every 20 years, the whole equipment pack does. When you're replacing that, it's critical that whoever installs that is experienced and understands this process to be sure that they set that pack at the right elevation. So sanitation methods and automation typically the residential swimming pools, most of the residential swimming pools that we see that we work on or build have a salt chlorination system as their primary chlorination system. As I mentioned earlier, commercial swimming pools cannot have a standalone salt chlorination system. They must have a backup chlorine and water chemistry system. So setting the salt system aside, most of the commercial pools that we see out there today are using either manual dosing, which is where your CPO, your certified pool operator, that's taking care of the pool, physically pours chemicals into the swimming pool to balance the water. And by Florida Health Code, he's supposed to come by and check that 3 times a week and make adjustments. And if you're manual dosing, you are not supposed to have, let me see, after the manual dose, I think the pumps need to run for 3 hours before you're allowed to have swimmers in there. That would be something to pay attention to. Manual dosing is really dependent upon the skill and responsibility of your CPO, and there's better ways to do that. We like to install ORP controllers, which I'll get to in a minute, or chemical pumps, which are Stenner is one manufacturer of chemical pump that's the one we prefer. And Rollerchem also makes, there's other ones, but Rollerchem is another popular one. These are pumps, they're small pumps, they're about the size of a half of a mailbox maybe, and they run on 110 volts. They're plumbed into a tank that has either chlorine or acid in it. And these dosing pumps are adjustable. So the certified pool operator will test the water chemistry. If he sees that his chlorine's low, he can manually adjust the Stenner pump to pump a little bit faster than it's been pumping to try to bring that chlorine level up. There's a separate pump and a separate tank that holds muriatic acid, which controls the pH of the water. If More often than not, if someone gets into the swimming pool and opens their eyes underwater and it's real stingy and burny, people will say that it's the chlorine that's too strong, but more likely it's the pH that's out. Our eyes are very sensitive to fluctuations in pH. The ideal range for pH in a swimming pool is 7.2 to 7.6. Typical pH of someone's skin and eyes is 7.2, and that's why we try to keep it there. It's the most comfortable. But back to how we put these chemicals in the water. Standard pumps can be manually adjusted by the CPO. The better way, the way that we like to do it, and the way we do it now on all new builds, is we install an ORP controller. An ORP controller it's an electronic piece of equipment. It has a little collection tank or a little collection bowl, and it has electronic probes in it that sense the pH of the water and the chlorine level. And as long as the pumps are running, it's drawing water out of the pool, sending it through the system. And as it goes through the system, a little bit of it is siphoned off and goes over into this collection bowl and then goes back into a return line. So that water is constantly circulating with the water in the swimming pool. And those two probes are testing that water continuously. And it's reporting it to the ORP controller, which is the electronic piece of the deal. And when it senses that the chlorine level is low, it will automatically adjust the standard pump to pump more chlorine. If it's high, it reduces the pump rate of the chlorine, and it does the same thing for the pH. And the state-of-the-art ORP controllers, the one that we really like to install, is a CAT 4000. It's made by Hayward. The CAT 4000, once it's installed and programmed properly, if it's within reach of a Wi-Fi connection, which is usually pretty easy to do, it will report to anybody that has the app and chooses to monitor the water chemistry in the swimming pool. You can constantly get a reading on what your water chemistry is, water temperature too, which is handy. And you can also set alarms so that if let's say in your CPO's phone, for whatever reason, the water chemistry gets out of the parameters that you set, it will ping his phone and say, "Hey, Johnny, come over here. You need to adjust this water chemistry." The reason that we find water chemistry so important is that we're submerging our bodies in this water, and it's all about safety. Legionnaire's disease is the most common result of bad water chemistry, and the most common place we have that problem is in splash pads, splash parks, because, well, I'll get to why we have that problem. But moving on, safety requirements that the DOH enforces. Your fence, and we see this very, very often on pools that have been in service for some time. They start out with a fence and gate system that meets the Florida Building Code and Florida Safe or Health Department codes for swimming pool safety. But over time, the hinges wear, the latches wear, the fence gets beat up. But the parameters are the fence must be 4 feet high with no cross members on the outside of the fence that can be used as a handhold or a foothold for a span of 44 inches. So you've got a 48-inch high fence, 4 inches down, you've got a horizontal bar, 44 inches below that is the ground. For a fence to meet such swimming pool safety code, it cannot have any openings under the fence or between the pickets or at the gates that you can pass a 4-inch sphere through. That's the test that they use. The gates are a little bit tricky. They must be 48 inches high. They must be self-closing, which means when you open that gate, you let go of it, it swings back shut on a spring. They must open out away from the pool. The theory behind this is that if it's a small child that's trying to get into the pretty pool area and nobody's watching him, it's one skill set to go up and push on a gate and have it swing open and walk through. It requires more coordination and effort to grasp and understand to grasp the gate walk backwards to open the gate and then to squeeze through it. So the health department says that the gates have to all open, and the building department, building code says the gates have to open out away from the pool. They must be self-closing. The latch must automatically latch when it swings shut. And the last parameter on that is that the release for the latch needs to be 54 inches above the ground. That kind of fence and gating to protect your swimming pool and people around your and children around your area from your swimming pool are critical to keep them maintained. Each one of the commercial swimming pools that you're allowed to swim in, because it's open, has an operating permit. And that operating permit has a few pieces of information that are pertinent. One of them is what the flow rate is, which the flow rate is something that can vary. The flow rate is how quickly the water goes through the filtration system. If the filters are extremely dirty, or if the pump is damaged, your flow rate can diminish below the required flow rate, and the health department will close your pool for that. The If you're having a pool refinished, like we were talking about earlier, there are very specific reflective qualities that the interior finish must have to be acceptable for a commercial swimming pool. The other part of that is that on the health department operating permit, it will say on there whether your pool is allowed to be open for night swimming or not. If it is open, to get a pool to be one of the questions that we get pretty often is, our pool's not open for night swimming. What do we have to do to be able to open it for night swimming? And there's a couple of different tests that have to be met. One of them is a certain amount of light on the deck will allow you to be open for night swimming. And if you don't have that night swimming designation now and you're trying to achieve it, you would have to have an engineer come out and do a light test. They'll measure how many, I guess it's lumens of light there are out there that are on the pool deck, and it has to meet the requirement that the health department has. The other way to do that is with lights in the swimming pool. There's a certain amount of wattage per square foot that needs to be met. Both of those are pretty expensive and difficult to achieve. Adding lights to the swimming pool, you would have to get through the deck, punch through the pool shell, install a new light niche or new pipes for lights, and then run an electrical conduit under the deck or all the way back to a power source. We've only actually had a customer follow through with those expenses one time to add night swimming. One other interesting caveat about day and night swimming is that if your pool is designated for night swimming, you can only have white lights in the pool. If it's only if the daily swim that's allowed is only from dusk to dawn, or dawn dawn to dusk, sorry, I said that backwards, then you can use the LED color lights in the pool. But if you're going to have night swimming, white lights are the only option due to Florida Department of Health. So I mentioned earlier that refinishing a swimming pool is the trigger that causes everything on the pool to have to become compliant. Some of the other items that we find that are non-compliant are the ladder style. I think I've got a picture coming up here. Yes, this is a picture of a ladder, swimming pool ladder in the deep section of a swimming pool that does not have a cross brace feature. This ladder no longer meets today's code. A cross brace ladder would have an additional stainless steel bar that goes just above the top foot rung there across to the other part of the ladder. And each one of these safety requirements that the health department gives us and is enforced is the result of a bad accident someplace in the past. And the one that inspired the cross brace ladder was two little boys were in the pool swimming, and one of them would grab the ladder and do a leg press and stretch the steel ladder out because it's not fastened to the pool wall. and his buddy would swim behind it. And that was fun for a little bit, and then it got boring. And so his buddy swam behind it and he let go of the ladder, and it ended up trapping the child underwater, only a couple of inches underwater, but underwater behind the ladder. And that had a terrible ending to it, which resulted in a new building code, a new health code for safety. Ah, here we go. There's a picture of cross brace ladders. Moving forward, one of the other things that the health department is going to measure for us when they come out after we've refinished the swimming pool is the height of the handrail. Those handrails have to be between 28 and 34 inches in height above the pool deck. And in this particular case, we did a paver overlay over the existing concrete deck, which made this ladder or this handrail non-compliant. What we ended up doing was loosening up the ladder. There's 4 inches, not ladder, loosening up the handrail. There's 4 inches of handrail that extends down into the deck, and we were able to lift that up and then lock it back down with the swedge bolts to make it code compliant. If you look on the right on the shower or the in the pool end of the ladder of the handrail, the handrails always have to terminate in the bottom step. And if they're not in the bottom step, the health department will not pass it, and it will not be approved. Marker tiles, that's a very critical one. The health department stays on top of that. We see that these marker tiles get broken or removed or defaced to the point that they're not legible anymore. And those marker tiles are something that's inspected. It'll get your pool closed for you if you don't keep them in good shape. And they have to be accurate within 3 inches. So where this says 3 feet 6 inches, we reach out into that swimming pool and measure the depth of the water. It needs to be plus or minus 3 inches of that reading. So it could be as shallow as 3 feet 3 inches, and it could be as deep as 3 feet 9 inches. But the health department has decided that that's close enough. This is a picture of a gutter drain. And when we build a new commercial swimming pool, the plans show how many of these drains there need to be. And there's a code that specifies how close they need to be. We looked at a renovation recently, and I started counting the drains. Depending on what size pipe that's plumbed with underneath there, they either need to be 10 feet or 12 feet apart or less. And in this pool that someone had refinished, apparently didn't really understand the program, there was a 20-foot gap without a drain, which means that they covered one of them up and didn't catch it. The health department did catch it, and the pool was closed. We had to go back and chip that out and replumb it. Main drains are a tricky animal. The Virginia Graham-Baker Act is the code that governs these main drains. The main drains have a life expectancy on them, and the life expectancy is published by the manufacturer. It's actually stamped on the main drain, and the health department maintains a record of the serial number of that main drain cover and when it was installed, and they need to be replaced every 7 years. You do not have to drain the pool to do this. We have divers that we send them down there with a weight belt and a screwdriver, and if it's a deep pool, we give them a scuba tank, but otherwise we just tell them to hold their breath. And this particular drain would come out with 4 stainless steel screws in the corners, pull that off, put the new one on, and screw it back down. But at the end of the day, that being out of compliance can cause your swimming pool to be closed. The bane of swimming pool management is black algae. We looked at one. We actually have a bid out right now. They just can't they can't stay ahead of the black algae in the pool. And black algae is everywhere in Florida. It is just it's in the trees, it's in the bushes, it's in the grass, it's in the air. And algae reproduces by spores, which are little teeny tiny seed-like pieces. every day black algae spores will get into your outside swimming pool. And the only way to stay ahead of them, there's a couple of things that need to be ahead of it from having a bloom in your pool. The only way to stay ahead of it is number one, you need to brush that pool on a regular basis, which your CPO should be brushing that pool 3 times a week. The second, the second item that you need to stay ahead of the black algae is the water chemistry needs to be balanced and kept in balance. Those spores that I'm talking about that are everywhere will land in your swimming pool, and if they're allowed to settle onto surfaces underwater, they'll bloom into black algae. So brushing the pool brushes them away, and that brush, you can't see them. And they end up in the filter, and you pump them away when you clean the filter. The water chemistry makes it um, a less welcoming environment for the black algae. Once the black algae gets a hold of the pool, it's very, very difficult to get rid of it. There are a couple of techniques that can really knock it back. But most often, when black algae really gets difficult in a swimming pool, it's because the interior finish of the swimming pool has deteriorated over time, either due to age or to variations in water chemistry or both. And that surface becomes more porous and rougher. So what happens is that rougher, more porous surface allows more area for the black algae spores to settle and not be brushed away, and then they'll bloom into the black algae. When we refinish a swimming pool, we we pressure wash it, acid wash it after it's drained, and then we'll apply a two-part epoxy bond coat, which virtually eliminates any chance of existing black algae blooming back out. And then on top of that bond coat, we'll put the new plaster, the pebble finish or the quartz finish. Um, Autofill is usually it is just what it sounds like. It automatically senses the water level of the pool, and if the water level is low, it turns the water on and pumps additional water into the pool. There's a float valve over in the equipment area normally, which will turn that on and off if the water level in the pool gets low, and then the water level in the tank gets low, and that actuates the float valve, which turns the water on. As the water fills back up, the float valve lifts and it closes the valve and the water turns off. Improper water level will prevent your pool sanitation system from skimming properly and from circulating properly. It's critical to keep the water level in the pool where it belongs, and the autofill feature is relatively inexpensive and very valuable in doing that. An emergency cutoff. On commercial spas, we typically have a timer and emergency cutoff right there on a ballard near the spa. That's part of the Florida Health Code. Not so on a swimming pool. A certified pool operator or a manager should be familiar with where the breaker box is that supplies power to the pumps and how to trip the breaker in the event of an emergency. That breaker panel is most often, some of the older pools have sort of a pillbox concrete equipment room, and there'll be a breaker panel in there. It should be clearly marked swimming pool circulation pump to turn that off. The newer pools are pools that have a vac pack or a compact equipment vac, which is the big fiberglass coffin box with all the pool equipment in it. Usually there's a gray electrical panel either just inside that coffin box on older pools. Nowadays, we put it on the outside of the box for easier access and so that it's not exposed to the fumes from the chemistry, which deteriorate metal products. Final exam introduction. Following slides present your 10 exam questions. Each includes a multiple choice question with the correct answer. What is the maximum surface area for a skimmer pool under DOH regulations? A, 500, B, 1,000, C, 1,200, D, 800. The answer is B, 1,000 square feet. Which of the following is required to maintain a commercial pool in Florida? HOA president, unlicensed handyman, certified pool operator, any board member. The answer is C, certified pool operator. The point that I meant to make earlier is that if you have a maintenance person that would like to become a certified pool operator, there's an online course that you can do that. That Florida DBPR offers that course, and I think you could probably do it in a weekend. It doesn't make them completely knowledgeable about how any given pool works, but it's very good in establishing the principles and processes the way the pool is so they'll understand how the pool is supposed to work. What is the purpose of a collection tank in a commercial pool system? A, water storage for irrigation. B, prevent swimmer entrapment. C, heat the water. D, drain the water to the sewer. The answer is B, to prevent entrapment.
John, I'm going to pause you for 1 second. Sorry, Diane's having a few little issues, and I'm going to try to see if I can turn the chat on so everyone can comment. I don't know if I have the ability to do that though. So, do you want me to read the questions for you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, this one is, what type of filter uses the discharge system of the pump for filtration? DE, sand, cartridge, an internal cartridge, or none? And the correct answer is B.
Dan.
What ORP range is considered optimal for commercial pool water? 500 to 600 MV, 700 to 800 MV, 650 to 750 MV, 600 to 650 MV. The answer to that, everyone, is C.
650 to 750.
And
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, you're okay. And then what must be included in safety equipment for a commercial pool? A shepherd's hook, life ring with 50-foot rope, pool rules sign, all of the above. I think we can all say we know the answer to that is D, all of the above. What pool type requires a gutter system? Pool with 800 square feet surface, pool with 999 square feet, or pool with 1,000 plus square feet, or a private residential pool. That would be C, 1,000 plus square feet of surface. When must a pool be brought up to current DOH code? A, when changing pool lights. B, when refinishing the interior. C, when repainting the deck furniture. Or D, every 5 years. And that would be B, when refinishing the interior. As soon as you touch it, you got to bring it up to code. What feature is required for night swimming and approved commercial pools? Color changing LED, white lights only, no lights, or solar lighting. As John just said, that would be B, white lights only. What is the minimum gate latch height above ground required by the DOH? It is A, 36 inches, B, 42 inches, C, 48 inches, or D, 54 inches. And the answer is D, 54 inches. Got to make sure we keep those little kids out. All right, John, give me a second because I think there's some questions. So let me pull
Sure.
those up. Does Wells Aquatics provide service in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale?
Not at this time. We have a franchise on the southwest coast in Port Charlotte, but we don't have anything going in the East Coast in South Florida yet.
All right, and I think those were the only questions that came up. Hang on. Oh, hold on, there's another question. Are there different levels of non-skid? We just resurfaced a pool, including tile, and the non-skid is so abrasive that it can break the skin and damage bathing suits.
There is a minimum abrasiveness that the health department can and will measure, but there is not a limit to how abrasive it can be.
Okay. So, sorry guys on that one. I think unfortunately sometimes they're going to be a little bit more than